Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, teaming up with Rideshare Drivers United that I've supported on many occasions. Now, the survey or the findings here, which I'm going to share, they were just released this morning, and obviously I'm going to put a link to their report. It was generated by them. They deserve, the download. And it's called Fired by an App. The toll of secret algorithms and unchecked discrimination on California rideshare drivers. Now, I've read the entire 44 pages, and let me tell you, you could replace California with any state. Nevada, Florida, Texas. You could replace California with any country, because this disease, this virus, right, is everywhere. And they have really gone in and focused on some of the core problems and explained what's going on here. Right now, wrongful deactivations, a topic that I talk about a lot, it's gone through the roof, right? And I just think before we dive in, I just think it's too easy for a rider or a passenger to file a complaint, maybe to get their money. Trickster in the house, he said he lost the case. That's not good. I want to hear the details. It is just too easy for these riders and passengers to file a complaint, right? And then the companies act too fast to switch off, to deactivate your account, because they don't want to look into it. They don't want to face any, legal problems with the rider, and the rider is paying. They don't want to antagonize the rider. They want to keep the rider. So whatever the rider says is true, and you get deactivated. So we're going to dive into this now. Gigrocket.com, the links, and Activation Hero, two companies that I work with. They help you with that process. They'll speed it up and they'll deal with the legal department directly. So I'll go into that a little bit later, but let's cover this Fired by an App, right? So executive summary, deactivation, when a rideshare company blocks a driver's access to using the app, either temporarily or permanently, usually without warning or recourse for drivers, this denying them their livelihood with no due process. Now, I want to shout out to all class action law firms. I've worked with 12. This is a great opportunity to go after hundreds of thousands of wrongful deactivations, right? And bundle them into a class action lawsuit. So I'm giving you the pathway to print money. I personally have worked directly and indirectly on 1,900 cases, almost 2,000 coming up. So the wealth of information that I could share with you of drivers that could potentially still collect. I mean, you could start off with 1,900 of the drivers that I have fought for, right? All wrongfully deactivated, right? So class action attorneys, law firms, hit me up. You have my number, it's below. I've worked with many of them. I will gladly introduce the drivers to you that were wrongfully deactivated, and hopefully you can extract monies, because they have lost money, right? It's lost earnings, it's damages due to a false report, for example, by a rider. But I don't want to take away from the story because it's just simply too powerful. So let's dive in. For hundreds of thousands of app-based drivers in California, could be any state, a workday is one of isolation. Drivers spend hours in their car and answer to an app that determines their next assignment, location, and pay. They are left on their own to cope with unruly customer behavior, derogatory language, discrimination, and harassment. During the height of the pandemic, as COVID-19 ravaged their communities, app-based drivers also had to enforce public health mandates and companies masking rules with customers alone in order to protect themselves and their families. For many app-based drivers, driving on platforms like Uber and Lyft is their primary source of income, and the ability to earn a living is precariously dependent on secret algorithms and a customer complaint process, that is inaccessible to them. You don't have access to that process. Only Uber and Lyft have it. Now, termination of the app-based job, euphemistically coined deactivation by platform companies, can happen suddenly and without any information provided by the companies and cause severe economic disruption in the drivers' lives. I read the emails, I read the text messages. Yes, it is absolutely a severe economic disruption, no doubt about it. Uber and Lyft may deactivate a driver because of reasons as simple as a slight drop in the driver's customer rating. Although the threshold is not always clearly defined by the platforms, drivers who are deactivated from the apps find themselves on their own with no meaningful way to challenge the deactivation and re-establish livelihoods that are critical to their survival. Proposition 22, California's ballot initiative, written and financed by platform companies like Uber and Lyft and passed by voters in November 2020, codified the misclassification of app-based drivers as independent contractors. In practice, app-based drivers find that unlike independent contractors who control when, for whom, and how they work, they have limited control over their working conditions and pay. Further, unlike traditional employees, app-based drivers are excluded from nearly all basic labor protections and anti-discrimination and health and safety laws, barred from exercising collective bargaining, and ineligible for safety net benefits such as state unemployment. A California trial court struck down Prop 22, but Uber and Lyft have appealed. While the company's appeal of the decision is pending, app-based drivers continue to operate under the new legal regime and deal with unprecedented uncertainty, right? So there were 810 drivers, which is a lot. 810 drivers were surveyed. 68% were people of color. 25% identify as white. 55% are immigrants. 81% of drivers rely on this job as a main income. As the 810 people that were interviewed. So, Rideshare Drivers United, RDU, and Asian Americans Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus, ALC, surveyed 810 current and former Uber and Lyft drivers in California to better understand the experiences as workers in a transportation industry in flux. 68% of surveyed drivers were people of color, 25% identified as white, 55% were immigrants. Termination of their app-based job, euphemistically coined deactivation by platform companies, can happen suddenly and arbitrarily. Our survey findings showed a troubling workplace where drivers are frequently subject to harmful customer behaviors, including discriminatory comments, hate speech, sexual harassment, threats, and physical violence, and in some cases death, right? When customers give drivers a low rating or complain to the companies, drivers find themselves suddenly barred from working with little information on how to navigate the company's opaque appeal process to challenge or even understand the basis for their deactivation, right? I get so many emails and text messages when the people sign up at GigRocket. They say, I don't even know why I was deactivated. I really don't know. So we have to start the whole process at GigRocket and Activation Hero to actually find out why have they deactivated this driver in the first place. And once we get a little bit more clarity and information, we can then take action. But many a times, drivers are just simply left in the dark. In the meantime, deactivated drivers, many of whom said driving on Uber and Lyft apps was their primary source of income, struggle to meet their financial needs, working under the constant threat of deactivation and in an environment where customers' actions and biases can influence workers' ability to drive on the platforms. Only a small portion of drivers in the study reported that they were successful in getting Uber or Lyft to adequately address their concerns about discrimination and safety, right? Key findings. 2/3 of all surveyed drivers have experienced deactivation. Listen to that. 2/3 of all surveyed drivers have experienced deactivation. Drivers of color and immigrant drivers were disproportionately impacted. 69% of drivers of color experienced some form of deactivation, compared to 57% of drivers who identify as white. 30% of deactivated drivers were not given any explanation or reason by Uber or Lyft for their deactivations. 30% of these 810 interviewed people, right, were not given any explanation or reason by Uber or Lyft for their deactivation, right? At GigRocket and Activation, we literally have to squeeze that information out of them, right? And spank them a couple of times and write some nasty letters and file the appeals before we actually find out, hey, what's going on here, right? 42% of deactivated drivers were told their deactivations were due to customer complaints. 42% of deactivated drivers were told their deactivations were due to customer complaints. That's almost half, ladies and gentlemen, initiated by the customer, by the rider. There's a couple of theories that I have, right? They hope, or they've heard they can get their money back, right? They just simply want to retaliate because they don't like the driver in the car, right? Or you go off and you start complaining and shouting at customer service and they're like, screw you. They could be involved in the customer deactivation. In the driver deactivation, their own customer service, right? Could be just revenge. You're not going to talk to me like this. I'll put you on deactivation. Let you go and fight for your position back. So on-the-job discrimination and harassment from customers was surprisingly frequent. On-the-job discrimination and harassment from customers were surprisingly frequent, yet drivers' complaints to Uber and Lyft were largely unheeded. So if you're a driver and you're filing a complaint, not really taken care of, right? But God forbid you are a passenger or a rider, Uber and Lyft get engaged, and it was frequent, as it says. 2 in 3 drivers reported facing customer bias or discrimination while driving for Uber and Lyft. Half of drivers experience acts of bias or discrimination due to their race or national origin. 1 in 4 drivers who experienced bias or discrimination lacked information on how to file a complaint, right? And only 3% of drivers who did said their complaints were investigated and adequately addressed by the companies, right? That's why you guys need to come over to GigRocket and Activation Hero. Activation Hero is really good when it comes to food delivery companies. GigRocket, I can tell you, does a phenomenal job when it comes to Uber and Lyft, the rideshare companies. And most of the times, the drivers just absolutely do not know what to do. And the links, by the way, are going to be beneath this video, right? Big C says, Alex Bonetti, not crazy. I live in Jacksonville. James Kaufman in the house, right? Lyft has me on hold for how long? We know all about that, right? So drivers face alarming rates of sexual harassment and violence while driving for Uber and Lyft across all genders. Let me repeat this here. This goes to the safety, the inadequate or the lack of safety, right? drivers face alarming rates of sexual harassment and violence while driving for Uber and Lyft across all genders. 43% of surveyed drivers reported experiencing sexual harassment on the job. Of those drivers, 47 reported being touched inappropriately by passengers. Sexual harassment was experienced by drivers of all genders, including 53% of female drivers and 41% of male drivers. 1 in 14 drivers who experienced sexual harassment reported experiencing sexual assault while driving. 1 in 14. Drivers feel they are negatively impacted by customers' biases and unruly behavior. Big one. Again, let me repeat this. Drivers feel they are negatively impacted by customers' biases and unruly behaviors. 50% of drivers who reported facing racial discrimination from customers said the customer filed a complaint against them. 1 in 4 drivers received a low rating from a customer after enforcing COVID mask rules, and you got punished for that, right? Drivers experiencing deactivation dealt with severe impacts on their basic needs. 86% of deactivated drivers suffered from some type of hardship as a direct result of deactivation. Of course, you're driving, you committed to a car insurance, and suddenly you get cut off. The money's not coming in. Of course. So again, 86% of deactivated drivers suffered from some type of hardship as a direct result of deactivation. 18% of drivers lost their car after they were deactivated. Can you believe that? 18% of drivers lost their car after they were deactivated. Before it gets to that point, please hit me up, right? Or go to Gig Rocket, go to the links below, and let's get you back on the platform. 12% of deactivated drivers lost their homes. 12% of deactivated drivers lost their homes. Those are two very, very saddening statistics right there. Recommendations, great recommendations. Provide just cause and due process for deactivated drivers. There's no process that you can go through, right? So that's what they are recommending and fighting for, that they provide just cause and due process for deactivated drivers by establishing a clear, transparent policy and fair and timely hearing proceedings that are easily accessible to drivers. Number 2, address customer bias and discrimination against drivers by conducting meaningful, transparent investigations and removing economic incentives for customers to file complaints without merit. Let me repeat this here. This is the big problem, right? Address customer bias and discrimination against drivers by conducting meaningful, transparent investigations and removing economic incentives for customers to file complaints without merit. What do you think are economic incentives for customers to file complaints? I want a free trip. I am going to make shit up. And Dara Khosrowshahi, Tony Zhu, Logan Green, John Zimmer, listen up. You don't move in this world. You don't understand this world, right? But these are your riders and passengers and clients, right? That are seeking, I'm saying this, that are seeking an economic incentive, right? And when you are seeking an economic incentive means you want something for fucking free, right? And who do you go after? You will put the blame. Oh, he was on marijuana. He was drinking alcohol. He smelled like whiskey, right? They're off the platform. The trip is paid for. It's free. Might have been a $46 charge. They got it for free. So there's a massive disconnect here when passengers are abusing this economic incentive because they want something for free, and they just simply make up shit, right? Dara Khosrowshahi, you should set up a panel. There should be just cause and due process, and there should be transparency on both sides, and you should have an investigation panel, because you will see that a lot of your riders and passengers are simply full of shit, right? Number 3, Provide drivers with all the basic employment and labor protections afforded to workers classified as employees, including anti-discrimination, health and safety, wage and hour, and organizing and collective bargaining protections. Now, this is going to be a long live feed. Afterwards, I will also show you how you can go after those riders and passengers and clients, how you can get to them, how you can extract money for them, how you can drag them into court, right? Uber hates that. Uber hates our method at GigRocket and Activation Hero because we go after the company relentlessly and we go after the people that fabricated the shit. It doesn't just end like, oh, we want the account back. No, we also want money because you guys supported a passenger or a client, right, who believed he or she had an economic incentive to just get rid of that driver. Well, that driver has lost money and we want that driver paid either by you, the company, or by the rider or the passenger that made up that shit, right? So protect drivers from workplace violation and sexual harassment by instituting safety measures in consultation with app-based drivers and consistent with state and federal health and safety standards, right? Drivers strike for dignity, right? And the word strike in that and protesting, it's something that I set off years ago. And people said, what are you doing? It's a movement that I started because I knew the unhappiness, I knew pay was going down, I knew there was no safety, and we had to act. Somebody had to act, right? I do believe that I was one of the first organizers and people to step up to call for strikes. Today, we almost hear about them weekly. And we'll just wait until we get all those airport strikes going. Now, introduction. I was assaulted physically by a customer and I immediately reported it. 4 days later, I was deactivated. I was a top tier driver for 4 years with the highest rating and no complaints. I've heard this before, right? Dara Koshashawi, Logan Green, Tony Zhu, and others, I want you to pay attention to these because these are real stories, right? Rafael Alejandro in the house, member for 3 months. Shout out to you, my brother. Much love. During the pandemic, I asked passengers to wear a mask. One punched the windows and threw water at me. This is what we have to go through, right? Louis Batista in the house. I have been insulted for my race, gender, and sexuality. I've been touched in unwanted ways by men and women and gotten advances and propositions. I have made reports to the company, but nothing has ever been reported back to me. Right? Dino in the house. Much love, my friends. In July 2020, amidst widespread protests following the murder of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer, Uber CEO, right, penned an open letter declaring itself an anti-racist company and avowing to be a champion for equity both inside and outside our company. That statement was made by Dara Khosrowshahi, right? And you did not deliver. Dara Khosrowshahi. Wolf and Eyes, hello from Joyland, Illinois. Trickster, I want to hear the story, dude. I want to hear the story. So just a month earlier, Lyft's co-founders jointly announced they were bringing company's leadership together to discuss how to cultivate more inclusive experiences for our riders, drivers, and team members. Behind these public messages of racial reckoning, the two tech giants, along with DoorDash, Instacart, and Uber-owned Postmates, were leading a $224 million campaign to persuade California voters to pass Proposition 22, which would exempt rideshare and delivery companies from basic labor protections and classify drivers working on the company's platforms as independent contractors. Pittsburgh in the house, Raymond. These efforts came despite the lack of control app-based drivers have over their jobs and the role of corporate algorithms in managing and determining drivers' rides, working conditions, and pay. The passage of Proposition 22 in California, November 2020, codified app-based transportation and delivery workers as independent contractors. This misclassification excludes drivers from legal protections afforded to employees such as anti-discrimination and retaliation laws and basic employment protections, including minimum wage and overtime pay, safety net protections like workers' compensation, unemployment, and state disability insurance, and workplace violence prevention and safety provisions, such as those around COVID-19. In California, this app-based workforce is predominantly people of color. In San Francisco, 78% of app-based or rideshare drivers and delivery workers are people of color, and 56% are immigrants. Lyft's report on United States and Canadian drivers states that 73% of drivers identified as members of racial ethnic minority groups, with 25% of drivers identifying as Black, African American, or Afro-Caribbean, 33% as Latino, and 12% as Asian. An older study commissioned by Uber identified 40% of Uber drivers as white, 20% as Black, 18% Latino, and 17% Asian. The same study estimated that 14% of Uber drivers were women. Lyft started as a new way to earn a little extra, a Prop 22 ad paid for by Lyft stated. For many drivers, however, this work is not an occasional secondary job. A national study found that 31% of app-based workers in the United States relied on this work as their main job, and that 58% needed it to meet financial needs. A study of app-based drivers and delivery workers in San Francisco also found that the majority of them depended on such work as their primary source of income. According to the same report, 71% of drivers work more than 30 hours per week on the platform, including 50% who work more than 40 hours and 30% who work more than 50 hours a week. Over 1/5 of those workers. Mohammed's in the house. I salute you back, my brother. How are you? Well done. Keep on fighting, New York, right? Over 1/5 of those workers had no health insurance, and 15% of them relied on some form of public assistance. Tech companies claimed that Proposition 22 would protect drivers' flexibility and help them maintain their control and independence. The reality is that many drivers find they have limited control over their working conditions and pay. Rideshare companies utilize algorithms to set pricing, manage drivers, and match rider demands. In June 2022, drivers for Uber and Lyft filed a class action lawsuit against the companies alleging violations of California antitrust law through price setting and limiting drivers' ability to choose which rides they accept without penalty. The Federal Trade Commission, a main federal government consumer protection agency that enforces the nation's antitrust laws, in a September 2022 statement, called the company's algorithms non-transparent. Francisco in the house. How are you, my brother? Gig workers often do not have the information they need to know when work will be available, where they will have to perform it, or how they will be evaluated. Behind the scenes, ever-changing algorithms may dictate core aspects of workers' relationship with a given company platform, leaving them with an invisible, inscrutable boss. Great, thanks for the link. A key part of this algorithmic control is user-generated rating systems to determine a driver's performance and employability. Customer ratings like those used by Uber and Lyft have been found to be influenced by racial, religious, gender, and other forms of bias. Even if a driver has a history of thousands of rides and accompanying excellent customer ratings, a complaint filed by a customer against a driver can single-handedly determine when and whether a driver is deactivated. A euphemism used by companies like Uber and Lyft to refer to the act of termination app-based drivers. They call that deactivated. Jim Fisher's in the house. Amid legal uncertainty about app-based drivers classification, RDU and ALC set out to better understand the experience of app-based drivers in California. We focus on several key aspects of app-based driving: deactivation, discrimination, and safety. This study opens a window into the deactivation experience from the worker's perspective, sheds light how customer bias and discrimination can take toll on drivers, and explores how Uber's and Lyft's platform allow customer bias or discrimination to play into decision about workers' ability to drive on the platforms. We also investigate health and safety risks due to drivers, including generalized violence in the workplace, sexual harassment, and COVID-19 safety. Finally, this study highlights recommendations on transforming the precarity of app-based work to place the needs of drivers on more even footing, more stability, basically. About the study. It's a long one, my friends. It's a long one. We have 85 people in the house. Smash the like button. Smash the like button. 85 people in the house. I welcome you all. Fired by an app is the feed. Charles Davis in the house. And powerful piece about the study. The study includes two components: a survey of 810 app-based drivers from April to July 2022, and in-depth interviews with 15 current and former app-based drivers in September and October 2022 to better understand reports of bias, discrimination, and harassment drivers face while driving, reasons given for deactivations, and the impact of deactivations on drivers' ability to provide for themselves and their families. The online survey was offered electronically in four languages: English, Spanish, Chinese, and Arabic. Drivers were also given the opportunity to submit written comments to expand upon their answers. Written comments that are shared in this report have been edited for clarity. To be eligible to participate in the survey, drivers must have driven for Uber and Lyft over the past 4 years in California. Surveys were distributed to RDU's members and their networks, as well as through outreach and Facebook advertisements by both RDU and ALC. The Chinese Progressive Association, San Francisco, and the Yemeni American Association also played an essential role in distributing surveys and conducting outreach to drivers, particularly drivers who speak Chinese and Arabic. The survey describes the trends and themes in the data provided by this specific group of drivers. This group of survey drivers may be more likely to be inclined to participate in a survey as a way of documenting or sharing their experience with deactivation. The 15 drivers who gave more in-depth interviews were selected from the pool of survey respondents who indicated they were interested in speaking about their experience. ALC staff conducted the interviews by phone in English, Spanish, Chinese, or Arabic. Interviews averaged approximately 1 hour. Written profiles were reviewed with each driver for accuracy. Survey sample at a glance. Demographics: people of color, 68%, 25% white, other 7%. Geographical distribution. Now this was done in California, 23% San Francisco, Bay Area, 46% LA, 20% other parts of California, 10% San Diego, right? Here is a breakdown if you want to look at it. 55% immigrants, 24% have limited English proficiency, 3% do not speak English at all. Latino, 28%, white, 25%, East Asian. You can go through that, right? And by the way, I'm going to leave the link below because it's just absolutely fascinating. Gender, 81% male, 15% female, 2% transgender male, transgender female, or non-binary. Source of income. The vast majority of survey drivers driving for Uber and Lyft is not casual or occasional work. 19% secondary source of income, 80% primary source of income. 5-star Pokemon in a house. Do a video about talking points of customers giving unfair thumbs down and how Uber needs a better and more fair rating system. I like your idea. Rideshare companies. Survey drivers have driven for Uber and or Lyft in the past 4 years. 70% drove for Uber and Lyft. 18% drove for Uber. 12% drove for Lyft. Findings. Temporary and permanent deactivations happen frequently to drivers. I deal with them every single day. And again, ladies and gentlemen, I have fought 1,900 cases. Any class action attorney, if you want the information on those 1,900 cases, it's a massive, massive lawsuit, hit me up. Someone reported a safety issue with me. Uber said, don't worry. 2 weeks later, they deactivated me. They said, it's final. We're not going to talk to you. So I went to the hub. The guy over there didn't explain anything. He was not treating me like a human. Once you are deactivated, they think you are a bad person. They just believe whatever the rider said. There it is. Black and white, my friends. Our survey found that temporary and permanent deactivations are frequent among app-based workers for Uber and Lyft. 2 out of 3, 66% of all surveyed drivers reported that they were deactivated at some point by Lyft, Uber, or both companies on a temporary or permanent basis. 40% of deactivated Uber drivers and 24% of deactivated Lyft drivers reported they had been permanently deactivated. Temporary deactivations were also reported to be quite frequent. Some 66% of Uber drivers who experienced deactivation in the past reported having been temporarily being deactivated, as did 39% of Lyft drivers. In addition, 32% of deactivated Uber drivers had been temporarily deactivated once, 22% twice, and 13% 3 or more times. 20% of deactivated Lyft drivers had been temporarily deactivated once, 11% deactivated twice, and 8% 3 or more times. When I saw that the rider was masturbating, I asked him to get out. He complained that I forcibly removed him from the car and I was deactivated for 10 days. Listen to that, right? This is the shit that they make up. This is the shit that the rider or the passenger turns on you. It's toxic, my friends. I couldn't drop off the person in the Uber pool right in front of the door. He got out really upset and a few minutes later slammed the door. Then I got a notice of deactivation for driving under the influence, right? Listen to that. Let me repeat this. Dara, Logan, John Zimmer, listen up. These are real stories. I get them every single day. We have to fight these wrongful deactivations at Gig Rocket, right? I couldn't drop off the person in the Uber pool right in front of the door. He got out really upset and a few minutes later slammed the door. Then I got a notice of deactivation for driving under the influence. My friends, if you ever get this straight online, you look for a drug and alcohol test. It'll cost you $150. Go there, get it right away, same day. A passenger who was part of the pool and was still in the car said, I'm going to give you a good review so they have that on record. My account was deactivated anyway. It lasted 36 hours. So for 36 hours, probably what saved this person was the other person in the pool, in the car, giving them a positive report, right? And if for 36 hours, this person lost, what, maybe $600, $300, $400? You have to go after that money, right? James Jordan, LA County, California. James Jordan, a black man in his 50s, drove consistently for Uber from 2016 until early 2022, when he was permanently deactivated. Thomas in the house, thank you, my friend. Appreciate you. Throws down $10. Thomas! Thank you. So James Jordan, a black man in the 50s, drove consistently for Uber from 2016 until early 2022. When he was permanently deactivated, James was deactivated from Uber after he refused to take any more rides that forced him to go out of his way as he was returning home from a 10-hour-long shift. After challenging the deactivation, James later learned that he had been deactivated due to old complaints made by passengers. James feels that the company did not take seriously complaints he filed about passengers who refused to wear masks, leading him to having to cancel the rides. Instead, Uber believed customers' allegations against him, which led to his permanent deactivation. I've heard this during COVID. Shame on Uber and Lyft, right, for allowing the rider and passenger to counterspin the story and cost him his job. He has lost money, right? And James, my advice is you go after that. You go after that money. Now, after being deactivated, Uber did not meaningfully consider my side of the story, even though I filed an appeal. I offered to send them dash cam footage to back up my account of the story, but no one took it up. I didn't get any information on why I was really deactivated until I went to small claims court. When I reported passengers for their behavior, all I would get in response was a generic statement saying that they would look into it. They wouldn't tell me if the passenger had been temporarily or permanently suspended from the platform when I asked, even if the passenger could be a threat to other drivers. Deactivation can have severe life-altering consequences for drivers, particularly for drivers who drive full-time on Uber and Lyft platforms. On average, survey drivers who were deactivated worked for 4.5 years for Uber and 4 years for Lyft. Drivers who experienced deactivation reported driving on average app on time 44.5 hours for Uber, 37.7 hours for Lyft per week. Our survey found that amongst Uber drivers who were deactivated, their most recent self-reported customer ratings was on average 4.8 out of a maximum score of 5, with comparable Lyft drivers reporting on average 4.75 out of a maximum score of 5. When a driver's overall rating drops below a certain threshold, drivers may be at risk of deactivation, though this threshold is not always clearly defined. In some services on Uber's platform, drivers with a rating lower than 4.6 may be deactivated. It had a big impact on my life. I did not know how I was going to survive. I'm a full-time Uber driver and Diamond driver. I wasn't sleeping. I was overwhelmed on what to do and constantly trying to figure out how I could get their attention. 86% of deactivated drivers suffered some type of financial hardship related to deactivation. Now, I do want to add here that at GigRocket, the link is below, and Activation Hero, the company we join forces with, they mainly focus on the food delivery companies. And by the way, they have a great intake form, first, last name, your phone number associated with the account, email associated with the account, what state did you drive in, approximately what date were you deactivated, confirm the company that deactivated you, and then very important, very, very important, the statement, right? How did they wrongfully deactivate you, right? So these two here, we fight back, right? And not only do we fight back for that account, right? We also make the argument, hold on one second, this driver has suffered financially, right? Your rider over there, person ABC, wrongfully deactivated that driver, right? Maybe just made up a story that he was under, or he or she was under the influence, right? And they've lost money. So What we do at GigRocket and Activation Hero is really go after those losses as well. Not only do we want you back on the platform, but we want to get paid. So a huge victory would be, getting a few $1,000s plus getting you back on the platform, right? A victory is getting you back on the platform. A super victory is getting you back on the platform with pay, right? Because they owe you money. So 86% of the deactivated drivers, that's almost the majority, suffered some type of financial hardship. Those are lost earnings, my friends. Those are damages that you need to collect from the company or from the rider or from the passenger with a subpoena, right? We want that rider or passenger's name. They caused the wrongful deactivation. They caused the financial harm. It's pay up time. So our research finds that income loss has serious ramifications for the vast majority of deactivated drivers. And I can attest to that. As I said, I fought more than 1,900 cases. When the people start making the calculations what they lost financially, no wonder they're losing their home, their apartment, their house. Daraka, Shashawi, Logan, Green, John Zimmer. By the way, we have 91 people in the house. I ask you kindly, smash that like button, ladies and gentlemen. And if you do not want to put up with the... bullshit alert. If you do not want to put up with the BS of Uber and Lyft and DoorDash, support my channel, hit the like button and give me a subscribe, right? Smash it hard, my friends, smash it hard. Nobody in the house, welcome to the RP channel. And he's a member, so he's on the L2 level. I appreciate it when you sign up as a member, right? There are certain cool little features if you are a member of a channel. Ruben's in the house. YouTube does a great job of that. And so let's get into this, because this is a powerful survey. A powerful survey, right? As many as 12% of deactivated drivers lost their home, a distressing and disruptive consequence for drivers and family members. 18% of drivers lost their car after they were deactivated. Many workers found it difficult to pay their bills. 28% of deactivated drivers reported having difficulty paying medical insurance, medical bills, and other costs. 24% reported difficulty paying for schooling, childcare, or other child-related expenses. So because of that wrongful deactivation triggered by a bullshit report by a passenger, your kids have to suffer. Dara, wake the fuck up. Tony Zhu, wake the fuck up. Logan Green, wake the fuck up. John Zimmer, wake the fuck up. It is affecting families and their children, right? Why? Because you are not acting, right? Because you have no system in place, right, to safeguard these people. And your riders and passengers can make up bullshit, which in return affects their families and children. Unacceptable to me, unacceptable, right? So in addition to financial hardship faced by deactivation, drivers may also reported a decline in their mental health and well-being going down. 59% of deactivated drivers reported feelings of depression, and more than half, 57%, reported feelings of anxiety. I read those emails. I read those text messages when they send us the statement to GigRocket. There is a lot of anxiety. There's a lot of depression. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of upset. There's a lot of anger. Why? Because some arbitrary passenger just changed their life, right? 51% of deactivated drivers reported experiencing family stress or conflict. So it even affects the family, maybe divorce or separation. 7% reported substance abuse as a result of deactivation. Maybe they start drinking or taking drugs, right, to numb the pain. Unacceptable. And who really causes all of that? It's these people on the top, these investors and these companies that have nothing in place. They have nothing in place to protect the drivers, because you know what? The rider is always right. The passenger is the fucking glory of them all. They are always right. We do not care a continental shit what happens to the driver. right? So when they're on drugs, on alcohol, because of some bullshit report that cost them their job, their car, their home, guess what? You just don't fucking care, Derek Oshashawi, because you are getting your $42 million no matter what. So a customer was being rude and wanted to go in the opposite direction of where I needed to go. So I canceled the ride. The customer filed a complaint alleging that I was under the influence. My rating is 4.8 with more than 7,000 rides. I'm considered platinum or gold. When I called, they said, we can't do anything. You can appeal, right? People don't even know how to appeal. Come to us at Gig Rocket. We'll slap them down. They sent a link for me to send the proof. I thought of doing a drug test, but how? It would have to be through a doctor. After a few days, I was told the deactivation was permanent. I appealed. I asked to talk to someone. They told me my account had been suspended, right? A significant number of deactivated drivers did not know why they were deactivated or how to challenge their deactivation. I was accused of staring and asking inappropriate questions to the rider, but the rider was asleep the whole time. I volunteered to upload all 5 rides from that night from my dash cam to Lyft, but they said I didn't need to do it. Another time I was given a warning for allegedly using inappropriate language to a couple. Again, I offered a video. Lyft wouldn't take it, right? So you have the evidence. Oh, they won't listen to it. They won't look at it. Typically, there were no in-person meetings, video conferences, phone calls, emails, or even a text written by a human being communicating the company's decision to remove the driver from the platform. Let me repeat this. I have read this almost weekly. There were no in-person meetings, no video conferences, phone calls, emails, or even a text written by a human being communicating the company's decision to remove the driver from the platform. Instead, survey drivers logged onto the app at the start of their workday only to find that they had been deactivated. With the loss of any job, workers understandably want to know why they are being fired or terminated. However, 30% of survey drivers who have been either temporarily or permanently deactivated say they were not given any explanation or reason by Uber or Lyft as to why they were deactivated. Of the drivers who could point to an explanation for their deactivation, 42% reported that they were told by Uber or Lyft that their deactivation was due to a customer complaint, right? 10% were told that they were deactivated due to a low customer rating. So once I stopped the guy from trying to forcibly take another guy home, he said he didn't want to go to his place and asked if I could pull over. But the other guy started yelling at me, telling me he had paid for the ride to do my fucking job. I drove back and dropped the other guy where I picked them up. After reporting it to Lyft, it got me into trouble. They accused me of purposefully driving around to get more money. Real stories. Reason given by Uber and Lyft for customers deactivation. I really actually I want to take a picture of this, right? I want to take a picture of this because we should be able to break these down one by one. Reason given by Uber and or Lyft for drivers deactivation. The number one, 42%, a customer complaint. And I can tell you of those 42%, about 40% are probably fabricated. I was not given any explanation or reason, 30%. I hear it every single day. Collision or accident, 14%. Customer rating, 10%. Fraudulent activity, 10%, but they don't tell you what fraudulent activity you did. Canceling rides, 7%. Incomplete background check or DMV record, 7%. Low acceptance rate, 5%. By the way, low acceptance rate, you are an independent contractor. You decide. So class action attorneys, listen up. Anybody that gets deactivated over a low acceptance rate, file class action. You're independent contractors, ladies and gentlemen. Failed background check, license or registration expired. Failed DMV record, other. Derwin in Fresno. Derwin, a black man in his 60s, has been driving for Uber and Lyft since 2019. He drives full-time, including 12 hours a day on the apps every weekend to earn money. Derwin has experienced deactivations on both platforms. 2 of the deactivations were due to complaints by Uber customers who had made racist remarks to him. In each incident, he canceled the ride only to find that he was unable to get back on the app to work the next day. Although he is driving for both companies, he continues to struggle economically. I was deactivated. Uber didn't explain anything. It was almost like they had it set up so that I didn't persist or figure it out. I wouldn't have gotten back on. They didn't call me or tell me what to do. They didn't answer the phone. There wasn't any way for me to explain or respond to the complaints against me. The companies need to change the process so they could actually help both us and the customers in the right way. The company does not want to change the process or tell you what the process is. They hope you go away, right? They hope you go away. They hope you give up because you can be replaced by another driver the same day, right? That's why you guys need to come over to us on gigrocket.com or Activation Hero if you're a food delivery driver that was deactivated. We know who to attack. We know who to fight. We know which addresses to go after. We know which attorneys to contact, right? And if they don't play ball and if they don't cooperate, we hit them with damages. That's what we do. And it's not expensive. It's only $69. Now, both results highlight how customer actions influence whether a driver loses their job. Survey drivers claimed that Uber or Lyft's stated reasons for deactivations are often incorrect, unfounded, or based on incomplete information. Disturbingly, 40% of deactivated Uber drivers and 16% of deactivated Lyft drivers reported they were not provided enough information by the company on how to appeal the deactivation. They do not want to help you because if they were to help you, it'll take up their time. Their time costs money because they have to engage paralegals and attorneys, right? They don't want to do that. They don't want to spend money. They don't want to educate you how to fight this. 9% of deactivated Uber drivers and 5% of deactivated Lyft drivers appealed but never received a response from the companies. Now, let me just tell you about this one. 9% of deactivated Uber drivers and 5% of deactivated Lyft drivers appealed but never received a response from the companies. So I mentioned earlier, we fought 1,900 cases. Do you know how many people that came to us and said, I filed an appeal, but I didn't hear anything? I have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of such messages, right? Because there is nothing in place, right? Their review team, maybe people are earning a minimum hourly, they don't care. You think they're going to work and, oh yeah, I'm going to get this guy reactivated. They don't care. They get paid per hour, right? So you have to hit them in the right places. And you got to find the target here, the soft target, right, where you hurt them the most, right? And to file an appeal online and send your dash cam footage, your photos, they don't do anything. They sit on their ass. They don't do anything. You got to go straight to the attorneys. That's what we do at Gig Rocket and Activation. Straight to the attorneys and say, listen up. Do you want to help this guy or do you want to face some penalties? And penalties are usually, we're going to go after the lost earnings and damages, right? There is such a thing as small claims court where the driver can represent or he or she can represent themselves. In California, they've used it as an example. You can go for $10,000 of damages. So if you've lost $10,000, go after those $10,000 and go after the rider. We will show you how at Gig Rocket and Activation Hero. Now, they didn't send me any formal email explaining the reason for the deactivation. Customer service was horrible. They're non-existent, right? And I asked them why I was deactivated, what happened. They didn't help. I think it's because I canceled too much. You can cancel. You are an independent contractor. They shouldn't penalize you for that. When you're fired by an employer, they usually have to tell you why. Usually you can talk with the owner or manager, but here you can't. People who are making the decision don't care. Like I said, they don't care. My Uber account was flagged, which made me ineligible for the airport trip. I tried to appeal. They cut you off from the airport, right? By the way, Activation Hero is really, really good with those airport appeals because they go after the company and they go to the airport management, right? So people who are making the decision don't care. My Uber account was flagged, which made me ineligible for the airport trip. I tried to appeal. That was 2 years ago. The supervisor finally contacted me and said sorry and lifted the hold. After 2 years. After 2 years. You know how much money you've lost in 2 years? Right? So if there is an apology, if somebody writes you after 2 years and says, I'm sorry, right? And then they're admitting they fucked up. Then you go after 2 times 365 days. That's 730 days of damage. You can go for the maximum then, right? Unfortunately, you will not be able to go into civil court and ask for $50, $100, $150,000 unless you opted out of every arbitration. That's why I show you how to opt out of those terms of service changes, right? And by the way, the last video that I made about opting out of the latest TOS, right? You agree to continue driving, and then you have 30 days to opt out of arbitration, right? People say, well, where's the opt-out? Give me the opt-out link. It's in the description, ladies and gentlemen. It's in the comments. I've put it there for you. I cannot make it easier. The aggression that people are like, I want the link. You didn't share the link. The link is there, right? Just use a little bit of your savvy, use your eyes, read a bit. It's in the description field on how to opt out, right? You opt out via email, and you have to opt out by sending a registered mail, right? They make it very, very difficult for you to opt out, but you got to opt out because God forbid you're in an accident. God forbid you get stabbed or murdered, or you're in the hospital and have $40,000, $50,000 fees. You want to be able to go after them in civil court for big damages, right? Not for, small Mickey Mouse arbitration amounts. So you can't just hear the passenger side. Uber doesn't care about the driver. They treat us as part of the system instead of human beings. So here's Mr. Chen, San Jose, California. Mr. Chen is a Chinese immigrant and a father of an adult son. He has been an app-based driver since 2017. In April 2021, a customer left his phone in Mr. Chen's car. Although Mr. Chen returned the phone, he was deactivated because the customer filed a false complaint alleging blackmail. Mr. Chen offered video footage from his dash cam and communication with the customer, but his appeal was denied. As a result of his deactivation, he lost tens of thousands of dollars that he had invested in a new and larger car for Lyft. You should pay him, right? He's offering you the evidence. He's offering you the dash cam. He was blackmailed by the passenger, right? The passenger probably alleges, he wouldn't return the phone unless maybe I put $100 in his account. For example, they do that type of shit, right? I wish these app companies would consider the events more from the driver's perspective. Drivers have it hard. I think the companies should listen to drivers' side as well, and not only to passengers because they pay. From the beginning, Uber and Lyft drivers don't have any benefits. In this society, drivers are looked over. Now, yesterday I made a video about a communications manager, Freddie Goldstein. I'm sure you saw the video. Freddie, this is a case for you. You're the communications manager. You have read his complaint. It's legitimate. Why did you start communicating with him, with Mr. Chen, and try to make those wrongs right? Because you've cost him tens of thousands of dollars. You haven't listened to his side of the story. You haven't looked at his dash cam, right? All you have done is, Freddie Goldstein, is listen to your rider, but it's cost him. So if you want to start practicing your communication skills and your managerial skills, I suggest go to Mr. Chen and make those wrongs right? If you're a professional. If not, leave. We have to pay for our gas. We pay to fix our cars. We have to pay for our own insurance, our own tires and more, but we only get really meager income. We pay our taxes, but we have no social benefits. So deactivation disproportionately impacts drivers of color, immigrant drivers as compared to white drivers. I can attest to that. That is true. That is true. I've done 1,900 cases. This statement is true. Hit that like button. We're on 87. I'm trying to get it to 100. Hit that like button, please. The more likes, the better the video behaves in the algorithms. The more it is seen, the more traffic we get. Although deactivation ratings are high across the board, drivers of color across multiple ethnic or racial groups were more likely to have been deactivated than drivers who identified as white. So I just want to read this. There's a rideshare trickster just sent me this, and he took them to small claims court. And he says there was a judgment entered, right? Court orders the judgment entered on the amended plaintiff's claim. Second, filed by John Pillar on 01/13/2023 as follows. Defendant Uber Technologies Incorporated does not owe the plaintiff, John O'Piller, any money on plaintiff's claim. Wow. So he lost that case. Damn, I wish I had fought that for him. That sucks. We're going to carry on right now. I'm just going to get a quick text. The rider told me to go back to my country, that I'm taking jobs from Americans, that whoever hired me should fire me, and he will make sure of that. Read that. A rider called me a shit Hispanic and told me he would do everything possible to have me fired from Uber. Joey Ayunan Azusa is a Malaysian immigrant and has been an app-based driver since 2017. When his young son was diagnosed with ADHD and needed to attend a special school, Mr. Ajunan quit his day job and started driving for Uber and Lyft so he could be more available to care for his son. He was permanently deactivated by Uber in 2018 and has never been able to find out why or who at Uber he can talk to about it. I make about $700 a week. It's harder to pay my mortgage. I have to find a part-time job. The inflation is tough and gas prices are high. Drivers who experience some form of deactivation by race, ethnicity, East Asian, highest, South Asian, Arab, Middle Eastern, mixed race, Hispanic 67%, Native American 64%, Southwest Asian 61%, 57% white. Interesting stats. Nearly half, 45% of all deactivated drivers believe they were deactivated as a result of discrimination. 51% racial or ethnic discrimination, 30% discrimination due to accent or language proficiency. Oh, then I would get deactivated with my accent. 13% gender-based discrimination, 11% religious discrimination, 5% discrimination due to sexual orientation, 40% other. Immigrant drivers appear more negatively impacted by deactivations compared to their counterparts. There are also disparities in deactivation rates between drivers with limited English proficiency and those who are fluent in English. 70% of drivers born outside the United States experience some form of deactivation compared to 60% of drivers born in the United States. 86% of drivers who do not speak English and 78% of those with limited English proficiency reported experiencing some form of deactivation compared to 60% of those who are fluent in English. I've been discriminated against a lot of times. Others have called me the N-word. A couple going into the airport got mad at me when I was trying to load their luggage. She said, "I don't like this fucker." I told her I was trying to help, but she could cancel the ride. I couldn't cancel a ride because I was trying to get the bonus. She was cursing, "Motherfucker, go back to your country." Well, that's sad. So I've had riders call me discriminating Asian names like Chink and Chinaman. In daily life, people are one way, but then when they are drunk, they let out the racism. I'm not even surprised Uber doesn't care. They won't match you with that person again, but it already messed up your rating. They are not willing to remove those claims. It is in the data forever. Many drivers reported facing on-the-job discrimination or biases from customers. Customers cursed me because I'm an immigrant and threatened to send me back to my country. Among all surveyed drivers, correct, I agree with Trickster. Yes, I have seen the video. Among all surveyed drivers, an alarming 2/3, 67% reported that they faced customer bias or discrimination at some time while driving for Uber and Lyft. More than half, 52% of all survey respondents believed they experienced customer bias or discriminated due to race or national origin. Drivers of color were more likely to report racial or ethnic bias or discrimination by customers than white drivers. Among surveyed East Asian drivers, 70% reported that they experienced customer bias or discrimination on the basis of race or national origin, followed by 67% of South Asians, 65% of those of mixed race, ethnicity, 59% black drivers, 58% of Hispanic Latino drivers, 1/3, 33% of white drivers. Comparatively, reported bias or discrimination by customers. 2 out of 3 drivers faced customer discrimination while driving for Uber and Lyft, 52% due to race or national origin, 20% due to sexual orientation, 19% due to gender, 17% due to their religion. With respect to gender, almost a third, 31% of female drivers reported experiencing customer bias or discrimination on basis of gender, compared to 16% of male drivers. Sample sizes for drivers who are transgender or non-binary were small, but 11 out of 14 transgender male drivers, transgender female drivers, and drivers identifying as non-binary reported experiencing gender bias or discrimination. I've been discriminated against a lot of times. They see I'm dark-skinned and they will cancel. When you are dark-skinned, it's all racial. They think you are a bad person. Others have called me the N-word. One customer told me to learn the American way. Another called me a beaner, and so on. Customers cursed me because I'm an immigrant and threatened to send me back to my country. The customer said she hates Muslims. They said, "I bet you eat a lot of watermelon, don't you, boy?" I receive weird Asian comments that make me feel uncomfortable at least once a week. Multiple people have said to me, "You should go back to China." I've had customers say negative things about my race, refer to Trump's border wall, etc. A passenger told me that the Quran was fake and that he hates the Prophet Muhammad. Peace be upon him. I will tolerate anything, but not about my religion. I've been called a cracker, honky, crazy white guy. A customer opened my car door, looked at me and said, "No, a fucking N driver." I got out of my car and tried to inform him on the proper way to cancel a ride request. He proceeded to spit on me. God, I would have knocked that guy out. Cold, good night. Wake up in hospital if I'd done with him. Drivers experience forms of customer discrimination that put their jobs at risk. Hundreds of times people have called me chink and said, why don't you go back to China? Some gave negative ratings and no tips. I've reported this to Uber, but they don't give a damn. They only change it so you don't have to pick up that person anymore. It lowered my ratings and affected my ability to do the work. Low customer ratings and customer complaints can both lead to deactivation. Roughly half of all drivers who experience some form of discrimination due to their identity reported that the customer gave them a low rating. Half of the drivers who reported racial bias or discrimination by a customer said that the customer filed a complaint against them. Similarly, 40% of drivers who were reported experiencing customer bias due to their sexual orientation said the customer filed a complaint against them. In addition to putting drivers' jobs at risk, customer bias or discrimination may also affect what drivers are paid for their work. Roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of drivers experiencing some form of customer bias or discrimination indicated that the customer failed to pay any tip. According to drivers who experience discrimination, negative comments from customers about their race, ethnicity, accent, language, proficiency, sexual orientation, gender, or religion were some of the most commonly reported customer behaviors. Furthermore, amongst drivers who reported receiving negative comments from customers about their race or national origin, 58% the customer gave them a low rating and 46% said the customer filed a complaint against them. One time a young white lady was demanding that I turn off the radio. I said, I'll turn it down, but I need it loud enough to hear the map directions. Under her breath, she called me the N-word. I told her to get out of my car. She didn't close the door and made a complaint. I told the company what she said. I don't know that they did anything. Right? They don't act on that. It's like, whoop, pretend it didn't exist. Pretend this never even happened. Drivers experience customer bias or discrimination due to 52% their race or national origin, 20% their sexual orientation, 19% their gender, 17% their religion. 52% of drivers experience customer bias or discrimination due to their race or national origin. Of those, the customers made a negative comment, 58%, gave me a low rating, 58%, paid no tip, 51%, filed a complaint against me, 50%, verbally threatened me, 39%, made a negative comment about my accent or language proficiency, 36%, refused my ride, 22%, physically harmed me, 12%, refused payment, 9%. 20% of drivers experienced customer bias or discrimination due to their sexual orientation. Of those, the customer gave me a low rating, 50%, made a negative comment, 47%, paid no tip, 44%, filed a complaint against me, 40%, verbally threatened me, 24%, refused my ride, 16%, physically harmed me, 12%, refused payment, 11%. 19% of drivers experience gender discrimination. Of those, the customer, 48% gave me a low rating, 43% made a negative comment, 38% filed a complaint against me, 38% paid no tip, 32% refused my ride, 22% verbally threatened me, 9% refused payment, 8% physically harmed me. 17% of drivers experienced customer bias or discrimination due to their religion. Of those, the customer made a negative comment, 62%, gave me a low rating, 49%, paid no tip, 40%, filed a complaint against me, 32%, refused my ride, 24%, verbally threatened me, 24%, refused payment, 9%, physically harmed me, 9%. Drivers faced alarming rates of sexual harassment and assault while driving for Uber and Lyft across all genders. I have spoken to a lot of female drivers and a lot of male drivers, and this is real, my friend. This is real, right? This sexual harassment towards drivers is real. One customer asked me, do I look better than your wife? What kind of person do you prefer? She kept pushing me, tell me your fantasy. I had to tell her, do you want to end the ride now or get home? Here's a good one. 43% of all surveyed drivers experience sexual harassment on the job. Of those drivers, 79% reported inappropriate comments, questions, or propositions. 47 reported inappropriate touching. 27% reported inappropriate sexual displays. 19% reported verbal threats. 7% experienced sexual assault. Amongst drivers who were subjected to inappropriate comments, questions, or propositions, 41% indicated they were also subjected to inappropriate touching. When broken down by gender, 53% of female drivers reported experiencing sexual harassment, as did 41% of male drivers. Smash the like button, ladies and gentlemen. Smash it hard. Smash it hard. 43% of all surveyed drivers experience sexual harassment on the job. One guy put his hand on my thigh and offered me a blowjob. I said, I'm Muslim and I don't tolerate this. He refused to leave the car despite my request. He kept insisting I have sex with him. A customer pulled his pants down, started masturbating in my passenger seat on the freeway while I was driving 65 miles per hour, and then reached under my blouse and put his hand on my breast, pulled it out from under my bra and started sucking on my nipple. Oh my God. I was in shock and I was driving and afraid that I'd crash. I've had several customers tell me to basically join them for the evening for dating or sexual activity. Asked me how much would I want for a night. So think like you're a prostitute, right? The customer showed me a picture with explicit sexual content, made sexual comments, and when he got out of my car, he left a napkin with semen. Fucking disgusting. Listen to this. A customer pulled down his pants, started masturbating in my passenger seat on the freeway while I was driving 65 miles an hour, and then reached under my blouse, put his hands on my breast, pulled it out from under my bra, and started sucking on my nipple. This is what drivers have to put up with? Daryl Koshashawi, Logan Green, are you reading this? Right? A rider began massaging my soldiers from the back seat directly behind me, then started kissing my neck after I asked him to stop. I've also had riders ask me for sex for free rides, flash their penis at me, masturbated, tell me I could get a big tip if I gave good oral sex. I have had customers who made sexual advances because they wanted to see if being black made me more endowed than others. Customers said women shouldn't be driving. Another customer said I was too pretty to be a driver. Other customers would make remarks about my appearance. Drivers suffered negative consequences for enforcing COVID-19 safety protocols. I received a lot of these type of messages. During the pandemic, we were only allowed to pick up 3 people in the backseat. Remember that? A father, mother, and 2 children wanted to get in. I told them if the cops see me, I will go get a ticket and cancel that ride. On the way to the next ride, I got a notification that I had been deactivated. There were so many deactivations during COVID, right? Eric says, I had a drunk lady move to the front seat and tried to kiss me as her husband walked to the front door. I mean, I've had crazy things in the car as well. Girls take their clothes off. I've had a team of volleyball players all pull their bras up. I had one girl like biting my ear and kissing my back. I mean, I've experienced all the craziest shit in Uber and Lyft. Throughout the worst of the COVID-19 pandemic, app-based drivers had to navigate state and local public health mandates and company rules, ensure customer compliance with masking policies, and as mandates ended, determine what safety measures, if any, were still needed and how to enforce them. This was the big one, ladies and gentlemen, during the pandemic. There were so many responsibilities, and the problem is there were so many wrongful deactivations, right? Because we're just trying to do our job. We were just trying to do our job. We got punished, we got cut off. Listen up, class and action attorneys. See, this is a big one, right? Especially during COVID, all those drivers that had to suffer and lost money because of their bullshit changing ways, right? We were thrown under the bus here, right? We tried to do right. They treated us wrong. In April 2022, Uber and Lyft removed in-app buttons to allow drivers to cancel rides if customers were not wearing masks. For drivers who remain concerned about COVID-19 related risks, Uber's and Lyft's decisions to remove those buttons exacerbated drivers' frustration with their lack of control over their working conditions. Many drivers had to make an impossible choice: protect their health and safety and that of their loved ones, or protect their source of income during a difficult time when many other job options were limited. I asked a passenger to put on a mask. She got mad and said, "You're getting on my nerves." Then she wouldn't put on her seatbelt. She was mad, so I already knew she was going to give me a bad rating. Nearly 1 in 3, 32% of all survey drivers reported that they had to cancel a ride when a customer refused to follow COVID-19 safety protocols. 29% said they accepted the ride but were concerned about their safety. 27% of drivers said they had received a low rating from a customer who refused to follow protocol. 1 in 8 drivers believe they contracted COVID from a customer. Your ratings go down based on asking people to wear a mask or asking people who seem to be minors about their age. Very true. The rider alleged that I was under the influence because I asked him to wear a mask. This happened 3 other times. Drivers reported experiencing physical harm, assault, and verbal threats from customers. One guy was high and peed in my car. Uber said nothing. The day after, the customer had my number and he called me and said he was going to kill me because he got charged for the cleaning fee. I called Uber to let them know and they didn't do anything. Listen to this. Let me read this again. Logan Green, John Zimmer. Let me read this to you, right? Let me read this to the children of Dara Koshashawi, Logan Green, right? Your parents are not doing anything about this. They're not leaders in our community. They're not CEOs. They're trash. Your parents are trash. To the wives of Dara Koshashawi, Sydney Poitier, your husband is trash, right? He doesn't do anything about this. He thinks this is fine. He thinks this is cool and allows this to happen. To the wives or girlfriends of Tony Zhu, John Zimmer, Logan Green, right? Your husbands do not know how to lead. They know how to get money from investors and satisfy your needs and buy you Gucci and buy you Prada and all of the things. But they do not know how to lead, right? They do not know how to treat people, right? So if you married them for money. You didn't marry them for their character, I can tell you that, right? So one guy was high and peed in my car. And I'm saying this to the wives of all these executives, right? So a guy was high and he pees in your car, right? In your executive Mercedes-Benz and your Rolls-Royce, he pisses in your car, right? And so the day afterwards, he has your number at Uber, calls you at the executive offices and threatens to kill you, right? Because he got charged for a cleaning fee. You guys can't relate to this. Tony Zhu, Logan Green, John Zimmer, Dara Koshashawi, you can't relate to this because you are so fucking far removed from the truth, right? This doesn't seem to be a real story, but it is real, right? Pissed in his car, was high, got charged a cleanup fee, and then threatened to kill. Can you imagine? This is why Dara Koshashawi has a $2 million security entourage to protect himself from mad fuckers out there, right? We don't have the $2 million, security entourage. If we are smart, we carry one of these, And if need be, we will fucking blow that passenger to the moon. I will. If they pull this type of shit, if they threaten me, I'll blow them away. Right? That's how we deal with it. You guys have paid security $2 million. You can't relate to that because you don't understand what fucking happens on the street. Right? We're on the street. We're in the dark alleys. We do the deliveries. We're out there at 3 or 4 a.m. We got to do what we got to do. Right? And if you got to do what you got to do, you got to do what you got to do. You get the hint, right? You don't have to listen to the bullshit of these executives who don't understand this language because they're not dialed into the street like you are. They're not street savvy. They're not street smart like you. We have to deal with this. They don't, but they deactivate us. So a significant number of drivers who faced customer discrimination reported experiencing violence or threats from their customers. I don't know about you guys, where I grew up, if this happened to me, right? If I would experience violence or threats from a customer where I grew up in South Africa, I took care of it right there and then. It's game over, right? And I'm not going to elaborate what game over means, right? I mean, I was in the army. I had my businesses in the slums. I wore bulletproof vests. I drove bulletproof cars. I had armed security. If I had to take care of business, and that happened a few times, I took care of business. I don't fucking ask any questions because my life comes first. If you have bad intentions against me, if you want to take from me, if you want to steal from me, if you want to hurt me or hurt my family or threaten me, you pay the consequences. I can write a book in South Africa what that means, right? These guys, these CEOs don't understand that language. They don't understand what happens on the street, right? I'm just saying that, Dara Koshashawi. You're living in your little beautiful, cozy, protected world, right? You do not understand this type of language. Drivers reported, so nearly 40% of surveyed drivers reported some type of verbal threat by a customer that the driver perceived to be based on their race or national origin. You should never tolerate that. Never tolerate that, right? Drivers reported that the only known action companies took against disruptive or violent riders was to unmatch. Oh, we're going to unmatch you so you don't get them again. That's how you deal with it. You unmatch them. Well, the unmatching is not going to match you with that person, but it's going to still carry on with the same problem with the next driver. Unmatching doesn't fix the issue if you have a violent individual. They will do it to the next driver or the next driver or the next female. Unmatching does not fix things, Mr. CEO. So if they did this to me, how can you guarantee they won't do this to the other driver? These driver accounts show how little control drivers have over their working conditions and how customer interactions can quickly become threatening or violent. My friends, all I have to say is protect yourself. If it means you have to get a firearm, so be it. If you have to get pepper spray or whatever you need to protect yourself, so be it. Smash the like button, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to try and shoot for about 130, 150 likes. That'd be great, right? So I was physically assaulted by a drunk rider. I was punched in the face. It broke my glasses. I reported it to the San Francisco Police Department. I took a picture. SFPD and Uber didn't do anything. That's when you go to the media and you out the head person there at Uber and at the police. Because if you were punched in your face and your glasses broken and the police just like, fuck, we're not going to do anything, they have to be replaced. Roulette wheels in the house. When I got to pick up location, the girl was borderline in terms of age, so I asked for her age verification. She spit on me. Puh! She spit on me, right? Even Ben is in the house. Welcome. So when I got to the pickup location, the girl was borderline in terms of age, so I asked for age verification. She spat on me, and she punched me in the face. Law enforcement didn't do anything. The only thing done by the company was not to match me with this rider. They did not pay for the doctor or physical therapy. Sue them. Sue the bastards. A passenger hit me from the back and took my phone and escaped. I had 2 passengers. One was white and drunk and started calling me my boy, my boy. I said, I don't like you calling me a boy. He kicked my car when he got out. At that point, ladies and gentlemen, I become a whole different animal. You kick my car, I've had that. The people come up, spit. I go in psycho mode. That's just me. I mean, I've been charged for battery and assault because I fucking hurt people badly. And I'll go to court, get a good attorney. And it was worth it. It was worth rearranging a couple of faces and putting a couple of people in hospital. It was worth it for me. Because it is one thing I will not tolerate: if somebody spits in my face or threatens my family. And I think they can just do that, right, and get away with it. I was brought up a little bit differently, right, on the streets of South Africa, right? So yeah, I'll confess right here, I have a battery and assault charge, but I also have very, very good attorneys. And was it worth it to have blood on my hands? 100% it was worth it. 100%. You know, I cannot stand for that shit. And that's what I'm saying, you got to be armed, right? Because if they do that, they deserve a bullet between the two, between the eyes. That's where they deserve it. Bullshit. We should not have to tolerate this type of nonsense, right? So, and by the way, it's not a fun thing fighting assault and battery, in court. Somebody that you beat up because a couple of people decided, they think they could have their way with you, right? But let me just say, it was very educational. Happened in Santa Monica, California. Was very educational. Got a good criminal defense attorney. Got off, and it was worth it. For me, it was worth it. It was worth it. Rearranging a couple of faces, and a couple of guys younger than me thought they could pull the shit. Spat in my face. Said, need to go where I could go back to fucking England and everything. And I remember pulling out my driver's license, and the guy like spat at me and said, go back to your country. And I said, no, it's American. You're born in Washington, D.C. And I cut him. I took the driver's license and I cut his face. And it was just bleeding and he freaked out. He did not know how to handle it. And then I started clubbing the others. I got assault and battery for cutting the guy with the driver's license through his face and knocking a couple of... True story, you can go and look it up. And am I proud of it? I don't know if I'm proud of it or proud of telling my kids that story, but it had to be done. I was disrespected, I was spat in my face, and I can tell you what, those people paid the price. I rearranged them nicely. Drivers' complaints to Uber and Lyft about discrimination and bias largely went unheeded. No point in reporting to the company. The first 2 years I reported it, but you never get a reply. So why bother? A man was jacking off in my back seat, right, while I was driving. I complained to Lyft about his behavior and they never responded to me. So I don't care if people masturbate in your car. I've had people make out in the car. I've had threesomes in the car, right? Did I go and report them? No, I didn't go and report them, right? If I would have reported that, nothing would have changed. They would have done nothing. Drivers who faced discrimination and harassment overwhelmingly felt that any complaints they made to Uber and Lyft went unheard. Only 3% of surveyed drivers who filed a complaint indicated that Uber or Lyft investigated their complaint and adequately addressed the situation. The vast majority of drivers did not get any company resolution to the customer bias or discrimination they experienced. Roughly 1 in 4 drivers, 27%, who experienced customer bias or discrimination indicated they did not file a complaint with the company because they were not provided adequate information on how to do so. People do not know how to fight these things. People do not know how to fight wrongful deactivations. Come to me, I'll show you the way. Of the drivers that were deactivated, interesting one. 1 in 4 drivers reported, I did not make a complaint to the company because I was not provided adequate information on how to do so. 1 in 7 reported, I knew how to make a complaint to the company but did not do so for other reasons. 1 in 10 reported, I made a complaint without including any evidence but did not get a response to my complaint. 1 in 10 reported, I offered evidence with my complaint but it was not reviewed and or there was no investigation. Bless you. 1 in 14 reported the company investigated my complaint but did not adequately address the situation. So you report it, nothing gets done. Relatable says not everyone can handle doing rideshare. If you feel off about the ride from the beginning, don't engage, just cancel and go. 100% right, follow your gut. Boba says they don't get to get off for $4.75. That's true. Erin says, I know a driver based in Vail who was permanently deactivated from Lyft for asking for a return trip fee. Can happen. Sam Amit, Oakland, California. Sam Amit has been an app-based driver since 2017. He is an immigrant from Yemen and drives 50 to 60 hours a week to support his wife and 2 kids. He and his family live in Bakersfield, but Sam would spend up to 2 to 3 weeks a month in San Francisco away from his family so he could earn more money. Driving in 2017, 6 months after he first started driving for Uber, a customer used xenophobic and abusive language towards him. The next morning, Sam was unable to log onto his app and found himself permanently deactivated. Come to me, Sam. He made multiple attempts to understand what happened, but was told by Uber that there was nothing he could do to get reinstated on the platform. Sam has since been driving for Lyft and earns less than when he was driving for both platforms. He continues to experience discrimination and harassment from customers. I'm living under constant pressure. I'm afraid that the harassment might negatively affect my rating. This is the only job I have, and I'm worried. The companies take a big cut of the fares. We don't have health insurance and have no benefits. They should consider the fact that we make the money for them. I faced discrimination for being disabled more than once. Destined driver in the house throws down $10. Thank you. Thank you for everything you do, for the community, Prof, and for being our voice. We are blessed to have you. Now, I want to introduce you to the Destined Driver. Firstly, go over, click on that, and subscribe to his channel, right? He's got great content. He's got great vision. He's been interviewing people. He interviewed the president of Fare Deliveries and Rideshare. He interviewed me. He's interviewed others. He's making a big name for himself. And most importantly, he is an advocate for drivers, right? And Destined Driver, the offer that I made is if you coordinate with one of my business partners, Brian Olson, Professor Olson is his name, you guys can do all the courses, right? For example, the deactivated to reactivated course, helping and showing Spanish speaking, the Latino community, right? How to fight this in Spanish. I can't speak fluent, I can speak a little bit, I can't speak fluent Spanish. So if you want to get those courses going, we will set up a split with you, right? So you can literally become a business partner of Gig Rocket and Activation Hero, translating those courses into Spanish. So hit up Brian Olson. I know you guys have been communicating, and we will funnel the traffic, and you're going to be making money. You can just kick back and make residuals. So I like him. I like his message. I like the way he carries himself. I like his business ethic. I like how he cares about drivers. And Destined Driver is a gentleman that you want to subscribe to and follow. Peace. God bless you. So, I faced discrimination for being disabled more than once. Uber didn't do much except take a complaint. Lyft did nothing at all. They ignored me. The rider said we were going to a fucking Mexican's house who was a narco. I said, you're assuming something that you don't know. He was upset and said, fucking Mexicans, they're all the same. It was a tall and robust client. I felt that if he became more aggressive, I would lose in a physical altercation. I contacted Uber immediately and sent a written complaint, but never heard from the company. This is how they handled that person, ladies and gentlemen. Conclusion and recommendations, which I'm eager to read because this is sort of like culminating in the finale here. But man, you guys have done a great job, right? This Asian Caucus and Rideshare Drivers United, you've done a phenomenal job on this piece, right? Conclusion, our survey findings demonstrate that app-based drivers lack control over basic working conditions. True. Leaving them both vulnerable and frustrated. True. Deactivations by Uber and Lyft are frequent and disproportionately impact drivers of color and immigrant drivers. True. Ladies and gentlemen, I have fought close onto 1,900 cases with GigRocket. We have a system in place. You have to be a little bit patient because it's at Uber and Lyft's pace. Usually it takes about 21 days. It takes about 3 to 4 days for them to get the mail, physically get the appeal in the mail at their headquarters, right? Most of these companies, DoorDash, Uber and Lyft, are in San Francisco. They get the appeal. They get your statement attached to the appeal. Then it takes about 21 days. Why does it take so long? Because they have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of complaints against them. They have a whole army of paralegals, whole army of attorneys. They all know me. They all know me. Not the nice guy, but I'm not here to be the nice guy. I'm here to slap them up. I'm here to wake them up, take care of those wrongful deactivations, or we will slap you and cost you a lot of money. Now, if the companies do not want to play ball, we push the matter to small claims court, meaning you go and file the paperwork, right? It doesn't cost much. California, you can ask up to $10,000 in damages, right? And also show you how to attach the rider or the passenger. Strangely, at that moment, they start cooperating. They start communicating. Things that they didn't do very well before, communicating, right? They lack those communication skills at Uber, Lyft, and DoorDash and other companies. We do Amazon Flex, we do Grubhub, we do Postmates. Go to Activation Hero or GigRocket. GigRocket is really good on handling Uber and Lyft deactivations. We do all of them, but Activation Hero is more on the food deliveries. Then follow the filed papers, right? You print them out, you fill it out. You're the plaintiff, they're the defendant. We help you in the process. You file it, you show your fees. You may or you may not have evidence because sometimes you just kept in the dark. They don't even tell you what, right? But at least you can now force them to communicate and force them to negotiate. And the goal is to get your account back and to get you damages. What are damages? Money, right? You want to get paid. The driver has been off the platform for X amount of months or years. He or she needs to get paid. He or she needs their platform back. That's what we do very, very well at GigRocket. Now, another company, and one of the main reasons I joined this company is because they were willing to do strikes around the country at the airports, right? And they're just as motivated as I am. In fact, brought me on board, right? Activation Hero. I even got my Activation Hero suit the other day that they want me to do videos in. I'll gladly do that, right? I will gladly wear this outfit that they made. See, it has a little A activation. It has its own little Marvel hero sign there, right? I will gladly make videos because the more I can get under their skin, the more the more appeals I can file, the more bullshit I can expose, the more names I can collect for attorneys, right? The more they suffer. Drivers need to get paid. They need to get back on the platform because it is unacceptable to me. It is unacceptable to my team. It's unacceptable to their team that any passenger out there can just file a BS complaint, any just BS complaint. They don't have to pay for the trip and you're out on the street, deactivated, possibly losing your apartment or your home or your car, right? And you've read everything in this report, what happens to drivers when they get deactivated. So it honors me to fight for drivers and food delivery drivers at Gig Rocket and Activation Hero. I'm going to put the links below. So if you want to get back behind the wheel, it's only $69. The letters go out. There's a lot of work, ladies and gentlemen. There's a lot of work involved, right? And there's a lot of back and forth. But we have a good track record. If we can get 70 to 80% of the drivers back, we've done a great job. Now, back to the conclusion, right? The conclusion of this piece. Our survey findings demonstrate that app-based drivers lack control over basic workplace conditions, leaving them both vulnerable and frustrated. True. Deactivations by Uber and Lyft are frequent and disproportionately impact drivers of color and immigrant drivers. True. Low ratings and complaints affected by customers' bias and discrimination result in deactivation. True. With little or no recourse for drivers, you have recourse. I just introduced you to Gig Rocket and Activation Hero. Companies provide no meaningful process for drivers to challenge, let alone understand the reasons for their deactivation. We challenge it, we fight, right? Confronted with this absence of transparency and process, drivers face devastating consequences, biased or discriminatory customer interactions, including hate speech, harassment, take a toll on drivers, and can even put drivers in physical danger. Yet, according to survey drivers, neither Uber or Lyft do enough to address harmful customer behavior. Neither Uber or Lyft do enough to address harmful customer behavior. I want the wives of those CEOs at Uber, DoorDash, just to read this and understand this, how weak your husbands or your boyfriends are. I want the children of these CEOs and executives to understand how weak your parents are, right? Because they do nothing to address this harmful customer behavior. God forbid someone would ever harm their children or their wives. Oh, I'm sure they would stand up. I am sure they would fight. I am sure they would press charges. I am sure they would get the attorneys out. But when it comes to the people that are paying your fucking salaries, that are making your investors millions of dollars, you don't care a shit if they are harmed, right, by customers. That is a fact, ladies and gentlemen. And every wife of every one of these executives needs to understand that. I'm telling you personally here, rideshare professors, telling your wives that your husbands don't care a continental shit if drivers, the people making the money so that you can get your Gucci bags and your Prada and your trips overseas, right? They do not care a continental shit if drivers get harmed. And they get harmed in so many ways. They get sexually harmed, they get raped, they get stabbed, they get shot, they get underpaid, they get deactivated. But you woman out there, you're not even woman. I would not want to marry a woman like that. You're just after the money. You're not after your husband's character because they have no character, right? Tony Zhu has no balls. Dara Khosrowshahi has no balls. Logan Green and John Zimmer, you have the softest testicles in the United States of America, right? I mean, they're actually so soft, they spongy. So, come on, man. Why did you marry these weak characters? Because of the money. Because they don't care. They don't care. In the transportation industry, transformed by platform companies, California app-based workers are in a precarious limbo. Notwithstanding Proposition 22, drivers across the state and elsewhere are developing innovative ways to organize and exercise their collective democratic power and challenge the status quo. All I say is strikes, protests, boycotts, right? They're rising up. In 2022, Uber and Lyft drivers organized to demand that the companies be held to the same basic health and safety standards required for other workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. In response to driver complaints, California's Occupational Health and Safety Administration, OSHA, issued fines against Uber and Lyft for failing to provide masks and gloves to their drivers and failing to implement measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19 and address general inquiry, injury, and illness prevention plans. App-based or not, ensuring a safe, inclusive, and stable working environment should not fall on the workers alone. Our recommendations start with critically important structural changes by policymakers and platform companies, which would help put drivers on a more even playing field and provide them with essential protections against customer bias, discrimination, harassment, violence, rape, sexual assault, stabbings, murders. Recommendations: provide just cause and due process for deactivated drivers. At Gig Rocket, my friends, an activation hero, we have due process and cause in place. We fight, right? We slap them down, right? Currently, app-based drivers can be deactivated at any time for any reason, even if the reason is unjust, unfair, or arbitrary. Drivers have no assurances that Uber and Lyft will treat them fairly, and this goes to the heart of why work can feel dehumanizing. A just cause policy that applies both to temporary and permanent deactivations is essential to giving drivers meaningful control over their working conditions. Such a just cause policy should set out Uber and Lyft's expectations for drivers' performance, provide transparent reasons and evidence before deactivation or disciplinary action, and provide a clear process to challenge the deactivation or disciplinary action. The process should include the right to a fair and timely hearing. Amen. And that hearing mostly comes in front of a small claims court judge, my friends. The hearing process should include the driver's right to thorough explanation of the specific allegations and reasons for the deactivation or disciplinary action, full access to any evidence used by Uber and Lyft, including any automated decisions that influenced or resulted in the deactivation of a disciplinary action, as well as the opportunity for drivers to the hearing process should include the driver's right to a thorough explanation of the specific allegations and reasons for the deactivation or disciplinary action, full access to any evidence used by Uber and Lyft, including any automated decisions that influenced or resulted in deactivation or disciplinary action, as well as the opportunity for drivers to provide their own information, witnesses, or other evidence in response. Determinations should be made in a fair and timely way with an opportunity for appeal, right? For appeal, except under certain enumerated circumstances, drivers should not be suspended from the platform and should be allowed to work during the investigation and hearing process. Amen. In addition, Uber and Lyft must provide meaningful remedies to drivers, including lost wages and tips, clearing of the driver's record and or affected ratings, and reinstatement. Reinstatement and pay. I mean, this is really everything that Gig Rocket and Activation Hero have been fighting for quite some time, right? So while not specifically investigated in the study, the use of services like HireRight, which conducts background checks on drivers and shares information about drivers across multiple systems, requires greater regulatory oversight, right? HireRight, they're full of shit. In my eyes, Checker and HireRight are full of shit. They're part of the problem. Background checks are important and should be conducted in a way that allow drivers to avail themselves of just cause policies and fair hearings, thereby ensuring that drivers are not precluded from driving due to bias, discriminatory, arbitrary, or mistaken reasons, and then bar drivers from driving across all platforms. Address customer bias and discrimination against drivers. As discussed in the findings, biased or discriminatory customer complaints can unfairly put drivers at the risk of deactivation. One way to prevent this is to remove any economic incentives that make it appealing for customers to file a complaint without merit. For example, the practice of automatically refunding fares to customers who allege certain types of driver misconduct without investigation can create perverse incentives for customers to file unwarranted complaints. They are filing lies. They are filing BS complaints. Do something about it, Uber and Lyft, DoorDash. Uber and Lyft should refund fares and or take action against drivers only after a meaningful, fair and timely investigation, which includes informing the driver of the specific allegations against them, a clearly defined and easily accessible process for the drivers to respond, and a careful review of evidence provided by both the customer and the driver. Uber and Lyft must also take action to better protect drivers from customer discrimination. The companies should develop a mechanism to accept and more meaningfully investigate driver reports of customer bias or discrimination, in addition to reviewing any relevant evidence or information provided by the affected driver and customer. Additional investigatory steps should be included: conducting interviews with relevant parties and witnesses, reviewing the customer's history or similar incidences, surveying other drivers who provided rides to the customer, and analyzing data and identifying behavior patterns that might suggest customer bias against a particular group. If an investigation reveals that a customer engaged in biased or discriminatory conduct against a driver, Uber and Lyft should remove them from the platform if warranted by the severity of their conduct. Depending on the circumstances, if it may not be sufficient to unmatch customers with only drivers who have already experienced the harm, as this may leave future drivers vulnerable. The companies should also expunge complaints or low ratings tainted by customer bias or discrimination. Finally, the companies should notify drivers when an investigation is completed so that drivers have closure after an incident. Closure. Provide drivers with all the basic labor protections afforded to workers classified as employees. That's the whole Proposition 22. I'm not going to go into that one. You can read about that. Protect drivers from workplace violence and sexual harassment. Driver safety and rider safety are inextricably linked. Systematic changes that increase driver safety can make conditions safer for riders as well, ensuring that drivers are able to operate in safe workplace free of violence and harassment should be a priority for policymakers and platform companies. Uber and Lyft should work with drivers to identify and implement measures to better protect drivers against violence and harassment, including appropriate use of dashboard cameras, a driver safety support line, ending the practice of penalizing drivers for canceling or refusing a ride due to safety concerns, sexual harassment or discrimination, more rigorous and meaningful investigation of all reports of violence, threats, harassment or discrimination, expunging all low ratings or complaints found to be based on bias, discrimination, retaliation or other meritless grounds, and removing customers from the platform. If investigation shows they have engaged in violent, threatening, harassing or discriminatory conduct, or if it's been established that they have a history of BSing because they want to get they want to get their trips reimbursed, right? Kick them off. Don't unmatch them, kick them off. Be able to say no. You know, have some clout here, some heart, some soul, Dara Khoshoshari. Be able to say no. Grow some fucking balls and be able to stand up against your riders and passengers for their behavior, Right now, all your testicles over there at the executive offices are soft like little sponges. Survey designed by. Here are all the amazing people that were involved, right? The acknowledgements. I'm going to put the link below so you can read every person. We have 139. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to get to 150. I want to get to 150. I have spent over 2 hours of my time to trying to make an impact here. Hit me with a like. We're on 140. I want it right the way up to 150, my friends. I am not stopping until we reach 150. So we've done this survey for 2 hours. We've gone through all of this. We've learned a lot, right? And the least we can do, my friends, the least we can do is get it up to 150. Thank you, my friends. Thank you for being here for a full 2 hours with me. Massive thank you to the Asian American Advancing Justice, Asian Law Caucus who put this together. You can go over there to advancingjustice-alc.org, right? Massive thank you to Rideshare Drivers United for standing up for drivers. We're 147. Tres, por favor. 1, 2, 3, bitte. 1, 2, 3, s'il vous plaît. 1, 2, 3, alsjeblieft. 1, 2, 3. We're on 152. Got my beautiful soaking up the sun candle here, keeping me warm, keeping a beautiful scent going while, motivating me to finish 2 hours. And I applaud you all. Let's go out there and make money. Let's fight for our rights. Let's stand up to these companies and show them. We have just given them a wealth of information on how to do things right? Because you're doing everything the wrong way. We're showing you how to do it the right way. And no more of this. No more of this, ladies and gentlemen. No, leave my clothes out there. Those are all my orders. All my clothing has arrived. They want to hide it.
You don't need these.
My children want to hide my packages.
You don't need these. You're an addict.
I'm a clothing whore. I admit it. I'm a clothing whore. I like Armani. I like Prada. I like all the good stuff. I'm a clothing whore.
You're a clothing hoarder.
No, I'm a clothing whore.
Hoarder.
I'm a clothing prostitute, not hoarder.
Hoarder.
There's my kids shouting at me and my wife shouting at me through the window. All these parcels arrived because I love clothing. I buy a lot of clothing and they call me a hoarder. No, I'm a clothing whore and I stand proud of that title, to be a clothing whore. So I love you all, my friends. Much love to you all. Next time you'll probably see me in that activation hero suit. They sent it. Looks super cool. Looks ultra cool. And we are going to keep on clubbing and fighting and banging away. I appreciate you guys. Be safe out there. Share. Sharing is caring, right? This was very educational. It should be very educational to the executives because you've been given so much ammunition, so many good tools here. You've been given a tool set on how to do things the right way, not the wrong way, how to do things the right way. These two organizations have shown you how to do it the right way. All I am is the facilitator. I'm the YouTube channel that brings the message across from these people to the company. This is how you do it. I'm super excited to see all my parcels right now. And be safe out there, my friends. Be safe. Take care.